Ready to go.
Boom! We are live. Look at that. All right, so we're starting off with a bit of a smaller crew today, but we got the old famous Discord mod, Rollins, or how do you say it? Rollins or Rollins?
Rollins.
I suppose it's on what side of
Like
the ocean
Henry
you're from.
Rollins.
Well, I pronounce it Rollins because it's like raw.
Rollins,
No.
like
It's like
Australian.
it's like raw, as in like you know what a lion does.
Oh, baby, I
Raw.
like it, Rollins.
All right.
Oh baby, I like it. Yeah, so we got Rollins joining us in a little while, hopefully. If he gets back from his little dinner, he said 10 minutes, so we'll see how that goes. But to start off, we will introduce the cast members. So we have Dayman.
Hello, I'm Dayman. I guess I'm a second lieutenant in the NV.
I
Uh,
guess. I guess.
I've asked for demotion. I have yet to receive one.
Don't say that, man. Now you just made us
Longtime
look
member
bad.
of ANV now, and before that, longtime member of 51st and Ninth Corps.
Why you gotta shout Ninth Corps out?
Because I was in there
Not
for
even
two
here.
and a half
They're
years.
not even representing.
Yeah, they should be.
Hey, it's been almost a year in ENV, man. Actually, it's over a year now.
Over a year.
Yeah,
Year and a
Jesus.
half almost.
Time flies when
I
you're
thought he
having
should
fun.
switch his name to Nightman when he came over to the dark side, but
Ah,
it
that's
was
that's just disgusting.
do it.
Dark side? What are you talking about? The war of northern aggression has no dark and light.
You're on the wrong side, lad. It's okay.
And if you hear that recognizable voice, we have Ninja.
Yep, I am Ninja. Shout out to the men and women of the Pennsylvania Army. Love you.
The men and women. Oh, you do have women. Yeah, inclusion in the PA Army. Yeah. So both of these guys will have the links in the description. Two of them will be to the ANV. So obviously, we have a bias here, and also Rollins when he eventually gets in with a full tummy from his little meal. But yeah, so today's podcast we are actually discussing the challenges of balancing gameplay and realism. Okay, so it's not as broad as yesterday's topic or previous topics, but I feel like if you dig deep enough, we can get to those broad parts. So we can talk about how the devs do it and where we think the game should progress, whether it be more gameplay orientated or whether it should be more realistic to the Civil War as it is
Honestly,
a Civil War game. The gameplay mechanics as they are now, and what you people yourselves enjoy the most, whether it is gameplay or realism. So I guess we can start with that first. A little introduction to yourselves. So, would you say you are a realistic player or a you play the game for the game mechanics and not necessarily the realism? First off, start with you, Damon.
Yeah, so I'd say I'm absolutely in the second category of playing the game. Realism comes second. I do appreciate the realism in the game, and I think there's a certain amount of realism that needs to be had, but I certainly am not a person who's about marching around in formations and learning all that stuff. Like I think I'm an independent fire kind of guy. If I can use cover, skirmish, true skirmish tactics. Oh, it looks like Rollins just got here.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
but yeah, so that's my stance on it. I think I do not very much enjoy the UEC events. No offense to those guys. I just personally don't. I don't enjoy the strictness of it. I don't think the game really lends itself to that.
All right. Well, hold on. We'll quickly do a little introduction to the old Rollins. Welcome, Rollins. You're only about 3 minutes, 4 minutes late, so you came in at a pretty good time. You just missed us talking about Dayman and being on the dark side. So
Oh, the dark side. Oh, I don't know what that may be, but
the
hello.
CSA.
Oh, I
There
got
you
you,
go.
got you. All right. Well, hello, Killer, Ninja, Dayman.
Welcome.
I'm Private Rollins of the 42nd Pennsylvania.
PA.
Play a lot of public matches and
you do play a lot of public
help
matches.
admin pub servers, and that's about
Now you're a War Vets event
my
coordination
contribution.
moderator.
Oh yes. Well, Discord moderator, I don't count those, but yeah, there's many of those.
Discord moderator, regimental Discord moderator. Yeah. So we obviously, do you know the topic of challenges of balancing gameplay and realism.
Mhm.
So we're first talking about personal experiences in terms of what you like more, whether it is the gameplay aspect of War of Rights, following the game mechanics, or whether you like the realism style of War of Rights, whether it be like, the maps, or whether you like to play a certain style that makes it more realistic, that sort of thing. So Dayman's already, you kind of jumped in on the end of Dayman's point, but Ninja, I guess I'll go to you. So what do you prefer to do? You are, you're part of the Pennsylvania
Uh,
Army, one of the most
Well,
aggressive
the
regiments
Pennsylvania
I've met.
Army likes to do what works. We're not going to sit out in the field and get shot down just because it looks cool. Although I do appreciate the fact that it does look cool. Um, we're out there trying to be competitive. We're trying to, be a good teammate and not be out there getting killed. So we try to be responsible and do the right thing as far as winning the game goes, but not so far as to um, turtle, you know, and make it so we're only about winning. So I guess we do balance a little bit of realism where we do want to get into the action and I appreciate a good line. I like to have the guys line up in a firing line, even if uh, actually I'll accept a messy line where they probably wouldn't in realism.
Mm.
But
So
we like to try to make it look nice, but it's really not. It's more towards gameplay in the PA.
all right. Rollins, what about you? I mean, as a private, I don't think have you ever run a regiment, Rollins? You ever been like a line leader?
I I've yeah, the private wasn't by my highest score all time. I have been an officer in another regiment, and I've been to event corps and led like like a regiment of 10 to 20 on a couple like nights before. So like I've
Mm-hmm.
done that before for the regimental side, just a handful of times, and long time ago, by the way, 2020, like post Arty at least, but not that far away.
So,
Um,
so would you
and
say
then
you
most of
like?
my leadership is in the pubs, though, if like anything like that.
So
But
would you say you like the game more for its realistic aspects or for its gameplay style?
so I guess like as a gamer, like which I was before this game, I'm not like coming from Civil War reenacting or anything like that. I'm coming from someone who played a lot of video games, and in particular, like strategy games, real-time strategy games like StarCraft 2. Like that's like was my main game before this.
Mm-hmm.
Love that game.
And I really am intrigued by the gameplay and strategy components of this game, right? So I think though what makes this game special is the way that it uses the realism to guide its gameplay, and I think it does sacrifice a lot of, let's say, like video game friendly things for the sake of going towards that realism. So like on a spectrum, like I thought about this and I think about it more of as a spectrum. I do think this game like is at its most satisfying when it's like trying to appeal to the realism stuff or ape that enough in the gameplay. And like if it when it leans the other way, it kind of feels more like a normal game. You know what I mean? So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like what makes it special is like its attempt or the lengths it goes to try to emulate the Civil War kind of combat in a pseudo kind of way. So I don't know. That's a kind of like a cop out thing, but I am more of like a gameplay person. Like I wouldn't play this game if it wasn't like satisfying. Though when I
You
was
you
new,
gotta you gotta think.
especially the first 400 hours or so, 500 hours, I was more a fan of like aping the realism because the game made me think that that was like what you needed to do to like get better at the game. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
I thought like the incentives were really aligned, especially in the first few hundred hours.
Yeah.
Like at this point, it's like, yeah, we know how to game things and like the points and stuff like that, and that's more of like an arbitrary thing. But yeah, I don't know. I guess as we matured, or as I matured, I feel like it got more gamey, but the magic of this that drew me in was the realism.
I mean, as a non-American, okay, as the only European in here, I can confidently say that the only thing that I like about War of Rights is the gameplay mechanics. So obviously you've got games out there, you've got like you've got Napoleonic mod of Mountain Blade, you've got bloody what's that other one again? Hold Fast. So they're two games that obviously are about the Napoleonic Wars or that era of style.
Don't forget Battlecry Freedom.
And Battlecry Freedom too, and
It's not a thing.
and like I feel like especially the gameplay mechanics is the only real thing that interests me about this game. There's no other game like it. So obviously you have, if I obviously I definitely like the Napoleonic Wars way more than I do the Civil War. And before I even played this game, I had no idea about the Civil War. I knew nothing. I didn't even know which states were on which side. I was pretty much like completely oblivion to it all. And the only thing that really drew me to this game was watching it play and how it was played. So I'd definitely say I was way more of a gameplay guy. But obviously, as you get to learn the Civil War, you get to kind of see, how beautiful the game actually is and historically accurate to an extent. Because obviously, there's only so far a game can go in terms of being historically accurate before it ruins the whole gameplay experience. Because obviously, in the podcast yesterday, we were talking about where we see the game going, and someone brought up about melee and how that can be improved. But obviously, one of the points is in the Civil War there wasn't actually as many melees as there is in War of Rights, and
Not even close.
I feel like if War of Rights didn't have that melee aspect, it wouldn't be as fun. It would be kind of boring and dry, just constant back and forth shooting. So it definitely is. I feel like one of the big things that keeps people playing in this game is definitely the gameplay style. But would you guys say it's different in regiments to pubs in terms of gameplay and realism, or do you feel like both pubs and regimental events kind of have the same stance on it?
I'd like to say something before I lose my thought, but so as we were starting this, I thought that this would be very short because um, the the premise seemed to be kind of easy, right? You're either on
Mm,
one side or the other. Do you
yeah.
like gameplay or do you like realism? But there's really more to it than I guess now that I've thought about it a little. There's like kind of a micro and a macro as far as that goes because like I'm doing gameplay style, but I'm also in there doing like buy files left, buy files right, into line, doing all of that. And we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep the realism, orders wise. I'm not saying anything like super high tech as far as tactics go.
Mhm.
It's like double quick, the charge, sprint into line. Like I said, like we're doing um, that kind of stuff. We have a couple of reenactors in our regiment. One in particular, I get most of my information from as far as like, how would this actually be done if we were doing this in the field? Um,
Yeah.
and he's very helpful. That's Sergeant Dud. We just we just saw him in Nathan in action at the 160th Gettysburg. Shout out to them lads, sleeping in the rain in their tents. I mean, that's realism right there. I mean, if you want realism, get off your computer and get out there. But also,
Would you guys class yourselves as reenactors?
no, we are absolutely not e-reenactors. That I mean, there are regiments that do that kind of stuff if people are into that. Um, but I mean, I like that kind of stuff, but it's not like, we don't really have enough people that like it
Yeah.
to, for us to like do it and practice it. Like I like it, but here and there, I'm not like super into it. I'm not reading like the manual and in all that. Like if I have a question, like how could I give this order more historically accurate than like get up here next to me, guys? You know, it's like okay, into
Yeah,
line or into line left or into line.
I
Like I like
definitely,
to do that kind of stuff.
I definitely feel like there is a way that the game can become more realistic in terms of like say during an event, a normal EU or NA event, we'll say NA for this instance. If there's a server, if it's like 200 to 250 to 300 players, in that one server there is going to be about 6 or 7 lines acting independently, which is probably one of the main things that kind of pulls the realism aspect away from War of Rights as a whole. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like if you were doing a 100 to 150 a side event and you had say 4 regiments that had say like 30 each, what's that, 30, 60, 90, 100, so even more than that, like 30 to 40 each, I feel like that would be a lot more like immersive in terms of realistic than
Four
it
big
would.
lines instead of
Yeah,
a whole bunch of skirms.
yeah,
Yeah.
having a
Yeah.
bunch
That
of big lines
Well,
where
some
like
events do that kind of stuff,
yeah,
Well, I'll
right?
tell you one event that does it pretty regularly is the pubs. So that I think that specific thing that you're describing, Killer, is the thing that I understood in the first 200 hours when I joined my first regiment and like was like seeing that like play out where I was like, oh, I'm a pub officer and then I'm doing this. It was the amount of grouping up in pubs is just I think
mm-hmm.
closer to at least the what you'd expect, I guess, for the Civil War combat sizes, like, because
Yeah,
it's just too much to manage. Like, you need the extra communication tools and the advanced preparation that the regimental community does and week in and week out to do what they do. And just a bunch of casual people, like, playing the game together are really going to streamline a lot of that stuff, like, really severely. But when you do it that way, it I think it's quite magical in that like it somewhat gets to those line sizes that are like close to like a decimated company or so, like duking it out with another one something like the same size. So I that's one I think thing I've noticed between the two, and I think on that question like the pubs kind of score like a couple points closer to like the realism end of the spectrum on that
I mean you gotta
Can
think
I
as
touch
well.
on something about on that here?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Go on.
Because I will say that like, given the size of the maps, 150 versus 150, that would have been a total skirmish. Like there would be no line forming at all in this case.
Yeah,
So like realism, like the forming the lines is not realism in this game in my opinion. Like it's a really fun thing to do, and I think I wish the you know speak on the development part. I wish the devs had some more open maps that would be more conducive to big line battles for fun. But like realistically, the size of these maps, it's totally skirmishing. Like the realism would be people would be kneeling behind rocks and shit like that, spread out the entire width of the battlefield, and there'd be no pushes. It would just be shooting back and forth at each other. Like
mm-hmm.
yeah
that would be
the game's been modified or scaled down, but like I don't know if you were to like double like I feel like we are aping it or like getting closer to it than what the regimental community is doing with like Killer said breaking down into several like lines of a scale of magnitude smaller than that. You know what I'm saying? Like there's lines of 10 and many lines of 10 behaving like little lines, and then there's lines of 25 behaving like little lions, and then there's lines of 50 behaving like little lions. And I'm of the opinion that the number of 50 is much closer to like whatever the real line would have
The
been, which would have
scale
been
for
Yeah,
sure,
hundreds.
yeah.
yeah.
You gotta
Yeah,
say on a scale
and you
basis,
feel it,
it
because
is
that
different.
at the line of 50 or more, you can't communicate with everyone at the same time in proxy chat anymore. And I think
Yeah,
that was another thing on pubs that I find get to that point, or events that are run, private events that are run only using local. Those events and the pubs kind of share this, where that element of I need my NCOs, they actually have a tremendous amount of impact on the effectiveness of this line and whether they all move even remotely close in the same. So those, I feel like these like challenges and stuff that we have when we're moving units and stuff like that, like I feel like it opened my eyes when I played this game as to like, oh wow, this
Like,
it
how did they
kind of
do it?
Yeah,
it
I
gets
totally agree.
How
closer
in the
to the
hell did they do it?
yeah, it gets
And that's why I'd
closer to the
say
truth of why they did this to begin with, as opposed to, modern combat where everything is just like much more spread out, I guess,
yeah, and I totally agree with that. And like really, I think that gets to the question that you were just asking about the realism.
I thought you had more to add to that. It felt like you were just taking a breath break.
Did
Would
you cut out?
I don't know.
I think Dayman cut out because I didn't hear him after he started.
You said realism.
I mean,
You might
again,
have
it's a
died.
spectrum. For me, it's a spectrum, and it's like clearly it doesn't get all the way there. And Dayman is pretty honest with, or good at keeping us honest with. Yes, we're nowhere near
Hello,
like
hello,
the real.
mic check.
Yep,
Oh, there you
Dayman,
go.
I
You're
can hear
back.
you.
All right, sorry. So I was saying realism and like calling yourself a reenactor or a gamer, like in that aspect of when you do get in those big lines. Though I will say it's like still not really probably realistic for that given
It's
map,
definitely immersive
uh,
though.
but it's very immersive, and it really I think it sheds a ton of light on Napoleonic warfare, which is
Yeah.
honestly what draws me to the game.
You gotta think as well, like, say modern day reenactments, they're only, like, obviously nowadays they are way smaller than what reenactments used to be, just down to the Civil War reenactment kind of community kind of dying down a bit and kind of dying off. So there's a lot, like, smaller regiments and stuff, and obviously, even if you look at those, sometimes, unless it's a big anniversary event, there can only be, like maybe 20, 30 people on either side. And, I mean, even for those guys, it's still, immersive as hell that they're trying their best to do it like how they did it back in the day. And, I mean, in War of Rights, I think they definitely, the only, like, the realism is kind of links with the immersion, like, you feel immersed in the battle, you feel immersed in that skirmish, in that line, and that kind of replaces the need for that realistic aspect because the immersion kind of gives you that realistic aspect in a sense. Obviously,
If
Yeah.
you're able to ignore the chat and actually engage and immerse yourself in the game, this game is A plus for immersion. It is so immersive. You can absolutely feel like, of course, I wasn't on the battlefield, but like sometimes I don't even know. Like,
what does
Turn the
that
I'm
mean?
just like,
graphics up
PTSD
to
simulator,
high,
right?
and you can't see anything hardly. It's like
you
it's
can
really challenging.
absolutely enter a different world in this game if you know,
Especially those
just
events
focus
that
on
are
the
like,
game and on the task at hand and doing, getting into line or, the simplest tasks. Like it's so immersive
those
if you
events are
let it
like
be.
that are like really close, like down to the wire, final push, last stand kind of things, and like, it's all about kind of holding out, kind of just.
Try to convince somebody in
I
that
mean,
situation that that's not real, like in that moment. Like that's a real
yeah,
fucking battle,
yeah, but
but
Yeah.
so
not
this
real.
this is the strategy RTS player in me here, but like it's not even like the best experience is like the closest, most competitive games. Like that's definitely the rarest thing and the thing you seek, I think, or like I would seek the most. But I am satisfied and really entertained by attempting to play out really bad situations too. Like
Mhm.
I don't think it's like an absolute loss of time to lose a very embarrassing match, even because it's still dramatic. Like there's still a lot
Yeah.
of work to be done,
I feel
losing
like
Like
even
rail crossing
poorly.
or river crossing.
yeah, yeah.
Or yeah, that's a really gamey one. But like any map, even when you're in a losing situation, trying to rally your troops or help create organization where clearly things went extremely, extremely poorly in the match, like the challenges you have in those moments are still like oh my god, this is
Just
like
having that is a
crazy.
win.
Yeah, because like you're
Like if
200 yards back to where you should have been. Everyone is frantic. Everyone is losing. They're panicking. Like you're trying to reassure people psychologically at that point because like people are really immersed. So like they're kind of freaking out and stuff. So even those moments were like, clearly it's not super competitive, and you're like it's still like taking you back to a place where this game is like still immersing you or like challenging you to like do something with this. Like I view pub officering as like I think one way to think of it for me is when I think of how good this person is like how good of a dungeon master they are because they really need to keep people motivated in the story and like what we're doing and to really not try to break that world because once you lose that really badly, those are the worst experiences in this game that I have is when like it's absolute chaos, no hierarchy, everyone's just all over the place on their own or something like
Would
that. That's when a team is like
would
truly broken.
would you guys
that's
say
why
right
good
now?
NCOs are literally the best.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Would you guys say right now, as the game as it is, do you think the devs have done a great job at trying their very very best to make the game just
I think they've
as
done an amazing job.
just as like it was in the Civil War, like as close as they can get it?
Uh,
Obviously, they haven't gone as close as they can get it because
I
I
think they
okay,
would give us less stamina. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. That I mean, yeah. There's a lot of stuff they could make more realistic. But I don't know if you guys have ever heard the legend, and I honestly wasn't there for the original, but they started off with historically accurate rifles, and by that I mean they're as accurate as the real rifles. And apparently, lines would just get mowed down because you just have all these kids who could already, take their skills from other shooting games, and they just hit every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so they added, one I think more muzzle sway, but then they also added the whole cone of accuracy where there is actually like randomness to your. There's a lot more randomness in real. Like a rifle, I think in War of Rights is really more equivalent to like a round ball musket in real life in terms of accuracy. Maybe
Yeah,
not the really far
yeah, I
distances,
get that.
but
Obviously, there is a lot of things that the devs have done to kind of make it not as realistic, but for a gameplay aspect. But there is a lot of things that the devs have put in to make it realistic. Say like the out of line timer for like flags and stuff, and used to be for officers. Just being out of line anyway, and the fact that it being out of line, you have a crap ton of things put against you, like extra sway, more ticket loss, all those different things to kind of encourage everyone to be together and stay together in groups. Because I feel like if they didn't have those things, there would be a lot more like going off on your own, doing your own thing. Like even the fact that they don't have a kill counter, I feel like
I like that.
that is a big thing because that would
I
make
don't ever
people
want one.
that would make people yeah I never do. That would make people so mad, like kill hungry, to be
It
like,
wouldn't
oh
be
yeah,
about
I
like the team anymore. It would be about like how many kills I can get. Good luck keeping somebody in line. Like when they have to get, no, I gotta go get my 10th kill. Like,
Oh yeah,
who's
that would
counting,
be
dude? Just
yeah.
get in the
I mean, there
line.
there are people that are so hardcore that they do that anyways, but
Yeah.
yeah, it would be multiplying that by an order of magnitude. And that as a gamer, like fundamentally here, like that system that Killer is highlighting is, I agree with Killer, is the most fundamentally innovative and probably most impactful thing this game has that really sets it apart. I mean, I don't play a lot of FPS, like, but I have played like PUBG. I think that was the other big FPS I played before this. And squads of four were fun. I didn't know how to really do stuff, but it was fun. But this like platoon level combat or whatever is above squad amount, I just can't imagine it ever working without these kind of incentives, which are fantastic for what they
see
try to do.
take say take War of Rights, okay, a Civil War based game, and then take say Hell Let Loose, which is a World War One, correct?
Two.
Yeah, World War Two, a World War
Yep.
Two based game. Do you think the devs have done a way better job making it just feel more realistic than maybe it is on Hell Let Loose? Because if you think on Hell Let Loose, the map,
I don't know. I think I, those are really the only two games I compare to each other in war that are like fully immersive. Like I don't know as much now about World War II as I've found out about about the Civil War since I started playing War of Rights,
Mhm.
but like from all I've heard, like that's pretty accurate. Like some of the guys in the regiment pick stuff apart. Like that's not right, that's not right. But like Hell Let Loose does really try for realistic everything.
I, I
I
I'd go
think
back.
those two games are similar in that way. Sorry.
Yeah, they're really similar, and I'd go back, to the whole reenactor aspect of War of Rights. There's a lot of stuff that's not realistic, but I think it gives a better sense of what it felt like to be in the Civil War, whereas like Hell Let Loose might be more realistic, like just mechanic wise, but it feels a lot more just like any other kind of shooter, and maybe that's
It's
just
also
because
more
World War Two is
modern
a
as
lot.
well. Like
Yeah, and maybe that's just because World War Two is it's they're all gonna feel similar, but like War of Rights is a completely unique. Like there's not a single game that I don't think that is really
not
even
even
close to it.
close.
I mean, if you think, say, Battle Cry Freedom, for instance, obviously
Can we not? Sorry.
that game, in my opinion, had some things that were better than War of Rights in terms of like, obviously they had Cav, wasn't great, but it was there. Their melee is a bit is like I don't want to say more complex, but at the same time, like there was like stabbing and blocking and stuff, and in certain other aspects, like obviously I haven't dived into Battlecry Freedom. I refuse to play the game, and I still haven't played the game to this day. And I
Same.
feel like what killed that game also was how kind of like ugly it is,
Cartoony.
cartoony. And I feel like especially a lot of the players that went from War of Rights to Battlecry Freedom would agree that it just doesn't. You just don't get the same feel in BKOF
Yeah, it's
as
a
you
fun
would.
game. I love BKOF, especially Commander mode. But like, you do not feel like you're fighting. Like, you don't get. It's not a PTSD simulator.
Yeah, and I feel like War of Rights just has that like once you're like the whole surroundings is what puts you in that like mindset, and then everything else kind of just adds on top of it. But I feel like if the game didn't look good, like I don't know, I mentioned this yesterday too. I'm gonna mention it again. Have you guys ever watched the the Baka video, like when they first introduced War of Rights?
I think I saw that.
The
It was
Burnside
very.
Bridge
Probably.
video.
Oh, I don't think it was Burnside Bridge though.
Well, if you haven't, I recommend going and watching it at some point on the company tool. If you go to like the backup page, you can see the video because that on there I would not enjoy playing that, like what that was. But obviously, in the last how long has this game been out? Like 7 years, five,
5,
five.
right?
I don't know.
2018 now, right? Yeah,
Holy
Yeah.
5.
yeah,
So
5 years.
in the last 5 years, obviously the game has progressed magnificently. What I want to
Yeah,
I agree.
graphically. Yeah, I've
I
seen
agree.
graphic,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
like the graphics of the game is what kind of sets the precedent of playing in the Civil War. Like all, if you look at pictures of Harper's Ferry or Antietam, they made it as close as they possibly could to looking just as realistic as it is like now.
As much as I'm not a fan of Artie, I think they've done a good job incorporating that it's,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well. I like the destructible stuff now. Like they're still adding good stuff. The fact that it takes longer to get over a fence is great.
I love
I
that
think it should have
mechanic.
been that way the entire time.
Same as like being able to destroy the like fences and stuff. I feel like
Yeah,
once they be able to do that with snake fences or even buildings like the church,
And
you
getting
imagine?
knocked down by Artie, sorry to interrupt, but getting knocked down by Artie is the best thing ever that they ever added
Yeah,
to this game.
that is
I
that is.
love it.
I feel like
It's so awesome.
in the last year, they've definitely added a lot more like quality of life, kind of making the game feel more realistic, kind of thing.
Quality of
Especially,
life or realistic?
well, I mean,
I
quality of
mean, yeah, I
life
think
and realism is just kind of like, I mean, the devs put a lot of detail in it. Even if you go into the drill camp looks beautiful. You know, even if you go to the tents, you got the fires, you got the boxes full of rations, you've got the, even down to cutlery. I remember reading one of their updates, and they mentioned that they added cutlery to the drill camp tents, and of course I laughed and cried inside, but at the same time I'm just like, that's fucking amazing, man, because it's just like,
the devs love the Civil War. There's no doubt on that.
For sure.
yeah. Do you think there is more the devs can do to improve the realistic aspect, or do you think they need to now focus solely on gameplay?
I think that they need to add options. Really, I mean, I think there's like some really obvious things you could do that would change it in both ways. You know, you could make the tickets count for more, like out of line tickets count for 10 instead of 5. Increase the muzzle sway, increase uh, suppression. There's a lot of like little things that they could do that would, I think, would make it a lot more, or would it wouldn't make it more realistic. It would force people to play more realistic, though.
They could
Mm-hmm.
add an invisible boundary in between sides on I don't know any maps in specific that they already have, but like another other maps where like you actually can't get into melee.
What so do you think
I'm not saying they should. I'm just
having like
saying
a
if they
game
wanted
mode,
to go that route,
like a
they
scrim, like a
that
shooting
would be a
game
more
mode like that?
realistic
Yeah,
addition.
I feel like they could do just really minor stuff that, yeah, different game modes, like, yeah, something where there's divider or little things like
Yes.
that.
Yeah, so I'm of two minds of this, and I think I lean more with the this kind of thought here, where they've done a really good job with the realism, uh, like attempts, like, or whatever you would call them. It's not perfect realism, but I think on a spectrum, this game hits the realism
A
thing
plus.
for a first-person shooter better than any other game that's ever come out. And I think they've done really
There
good
you
with
go.
that. And they
Recorded. Sorry, Karen.
sorry, and game in terms of game modes, the skirmish mode is like really good, and the Maryland campaign at aping is really good. Preferably, like, I know they came out with the more casual game modes in the past couple years with Conquest and Contention. I I really would like to see a good like a good casual mode that's kind of better than either of those, like, or improves once again on their attempt to make a more casual game mode. And preferably, and this is me just being a little greedy, is like, I kind of wish that this casual game mode would have a lesser average time than 45 minutes. Maybe something shooting for like 20 or 30
I would like
max.
that. I would also like one with a very much longer time.
Sure, yeah, no, that's the other end of the
Just have
spectrum. But
options,
Yeah.
man.
preferably, that
Yeah.
would like to see something more on in that direction for like the next step. And that's generally more gaminess in
Yeah, it
my
would be nice to
opinion.
have both. Like a quick match or a 45
So
minute
like
or
some more game modes
yeah,
like
some
that
games
kind
have
of
quick
change the
quick
way that it
match.
is now.
Jump in, do a little couple of volleys, do a little bayonet charge, game's over. Like maybe have a you start at taking losses or something like that. The
Yeah,
equivalent of
yeah.
would be
Or
dope
I
in the next
know.
scenarios, but
edition.
that's okay. That's asking too much.
Oh well, scenario. Maybe that's the name of it. That'd be a clever title for a game mode.
So
Scenarios.
I mean,
We
even
might be
when
getting off
people,
base though. Are we supposed to be
no,
talking
no,
about
no. I mean, because this, I mean, these are things that, like, you think. I mean, that's more of a gameplay aspect of, you would
I
find
love the
that.
game as
Oh,
it is.
the last
I'd like to
question
be
you
on
said
record.
was, what could they do to enhance it, the realism that they haven't done yet?
Mhm.
One idea that was tossed out that was really good and I liked it, was like when you aim your weapon over a fence or something like that, that you get increased like or better aim or less sway, however they want to modify it, but better shooting stats for somebody who's like actually at a defensive structure, like a fence or something like that.
I was
Like
thinking of something like that for if you have a drummer in formation or something like that.
yeah, do you think they could use the musicians better? Do you
Half a
think that
second
would?
off your
And
reload
flag.
time if you're in formation with a. But 6 isn't enough for that. Like
Ooh,
you'd have to be in a formation of like 20 and get like a half a second off your reload time if you have a drummer. Just to make it
yeah, I'm
something.
I'm with the devs on their thing about how difficult it is for them to.
Oh yeah, to code that? Oh my God.
Well,
I know.
yeah, it's not but they want the musicians to be used authentically in spirit, which means they're more of a communicator or a signaler than a buff.
They
You
were
know what I
also
mean?
for morale. They did
Yeah,
especially drums, I
a
think.
little bit.
Like
I think on
maybe not,
March,
I
in
don't know
between the
that for a fact.
battles, they were definitely playing music, and that was I think I read something.
Okay,
I read an
between
account.
battles is probably yeah.
Yeah, but for in battle, like it enhances like signaling. I can get that, and I can appreciate that in a large setting.
Mhm.
Like, oh yeah, my NCOs are struggling to get the fire order out, and this tune syncs up with it for some reason. But um, rather than like really getting that perfect, which I think is just really hard, just given how niche of a role it is, and like how you really, I'm not sure if we have enough people that want to use that role in that way. Um, I like an idea that a friend of mine, Agrippa, proposed once, and I think this is relating to incentivize adding another layer of incentives on the morale system, where larger groups, like if two companies are fighting together, like that they have an aura effect or something that incentivizes them being closer together rather than
Like a step
apart.
above information.
Yeah,
Like
either
in a bigger formation.
like Damon was saying, like they could do this in multiple ways. They could readjust the scale of ticket loss so that out of line and then skirmishing, and then there's like an in between step where
Mhm.
you're
Well, yeah,
not
once you reach
with,
6, you're in formation. You can make it if 20 guys
or if like the two
or
flags
50.
of the same regiment are together. You know what I mean?
Well, that could just
Like
be two flags kind of hanging out in a
yeah,
field, right?
yeah, they would get a slight buff, maybe 1 second
Do you mean
more
like
on the
the A
respawn
company
or
flag
something.
and the B company flag?
Yeah, the A and
Okay.
B company flag. I think Bradley made a joke at one point in the Discord saying, "Yeah, but only if the regimental colors are to the left of the national colors or something like
Okay, only
that."
if you make it actually historically accurate.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so a guy in chat, Kappa, he said, it would be cool if we had a game mode where there are different win conditions from the start at random. Like, for example, take this artillery battery or capture this position.
That's conquest, right? Isn't
No,
it?
but
Well,
like
It,
instead
it
of it
is in
being
Capture this
theory.
instead of
point,
it
It
being
capture
doesn't
a
that
actually do
point.
that.
instead of it being a flagpole, it's more of like say on I don't know, say on a conquest map like framing fence lines, the one that has like bloody lane, roulette lane.
hmm
Say one of the conditions, and there's an attacking team and a defending team. One of the
That's
points,
effectively what conquest does. It's
yeah,
not about the flag as so much as you control that ground, you're defending it,
yeah.
or you
yeah,
need to go get it down, you're
but
the
Some of
attacking
those
team. That's
flags are located on artillery batteries too, but
yeah.
I
So
I
like
can
the
see
points
what
would
this.
be, say I don't know, capture the capture the capture the barn or whatever. Like say capture the barn position where there isn't exactly a flag, but like there is on like skirmish maps, there's a capture point, like a a capture zone, a point of
Yeah.
contention where if you're in it,
I
you
mean,
start
really,
capturing it.
we had a
it's
strat
just
on
not.
Auto Sherika's Union. If you capture the tub, you win. It was 100%
So do you
until they
think?
stopped letting us spawn in houses.
Yeah, and like they would kind of name it a bit like how on Hell at Loose, the points kind of have they're in like named cities and stuff. So it'd be
I, th-
like say I don't know I don't know what batteries are on that map, but say there's
Oh,
like a French's battery and that's like a
Mhm.
point, and like it'll tell you at the top of the screen capture French's battery, and then if you capture it, it'll move on to defend so and so defend, like, I don't know, I'm just gonna say some random name like Richard's
I feel
house.
like this is contention.
Yeah,
So
but
It's
like,
contention, but
it's a
like
good
on
idea.
actually
It's
strategic points where
it's a good
contention is like kind of
idea.
random
This
spots.
actually, so this idea reminds me of another tip that my friend Oliver suggested, which was they name these points, like just literally
I
give
feel
them
like
names.
that would make it a little bit more realistic in
Oh
a
yeah,
sense.
like Wheatfield. Like let's say you're playing Hilltop on the South Mountain contention, and it's like the
The
point that's in the
angle.
valley in the Wheatfield is literally called the Wheatfield point, and then the one in the cornfield is like the cornfield, or the other one's the
Yeah.
The
Stonewall. Like, or
forest.
each map has its own
Instead of
descriptive
A, B, and
areas.
C, you know what I mean? Like if there's a point next to an
I
artillery
feel like
position,
that's
they would
you
name
go.
it the artillery position. So like
It
capture
would
French's battery, something like what I said
it
before,
would ha-
or
it would
the names of
enhance the
houses.
realism significantly. I
I agree
agree.
with that. I feel like maybe they did that to for us as a favor, so we wouldn't have to remember
Yeah,
7
but
different
you know we're gonna
points
do that
on
anyway. You know we're
20
always
different. Yes, no, eventually you're
remember.
right. We are going to have it all mapped out, but like A, B, and C is kind of easier. So like thank you
I
devs
agree. I agree. Yeah.
for that
And
part.
on
I also
skirmish
agree with
maps
you
as
that it would
well.
be cool if they did that.
It would see, it's like a little thing they could do. Obviously, it would take a little bit of time, and over time, people would have to get used to it. But I feel like it would add a little bit of realism to playing that game. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Where
Yeah.
it's a bit like how on like Hell Let Loose, how the points are actually, like towns on those battlefields that were actually fought over in World War Two. It would be the kind, because obviously all these spots in War of Rights were fought around like this guy's
Well, Hell Let
farm,
Loose
or
does that.
yeah, that's what I mean.
That
So
exact thing, yeah.
yeah, so it's kind of like for people say in Europe, right? If you live in Belgium, okay, you might know that spot, and you'd be like, oh yeah, I'm fighting over so and so town. I've been in that town, blah blah. It just makes it a little bit more like yeah, I'm doing this. Whereas like oh, I'm gonna go attack B point. It just doesn't have that kind of
Same
kick.
Marie Dumont.
Yeah, it
Like
doesn't have that kind
Hell
of
Let
kick
Loose does that.
as
Purple
it
Heart
does.
Lane.
Yeah, but like
And it's
in
actually
say,
awesome, so that's a good point.
yeah, it's like
Oh.
you'd be fighting because obviously all the barns and all of the houses and stuff are kind of named places like in real life or back
Hmm.
in that day. So I feel
I
like they could
I
always do that and switch it up a bit.
I think it's a fine point, Killer.
Well,
It would
Kappa
really
Kappa
help.
kind of came up with it, so
Oh, Kappa. Thank you for keeping track of that, Killer. Kappa, it was a good point. Uh-huh. No pun intended. So the other thing that I thought of, because we're talking about specific points of contention on these scenarios and ideas, um, another good idea I've heard of from somebody else, I think it's another Agrippa idea, was the flagpoles in contention and in conquest. Um, those structures and the way we interact with them are quite gamey, and I don't. I mean, at this point, I feel like I've gotten over it, but I did think, I think for the first several games I played in that game mode, that as a structure, as a way to fight over a piece of territory, it did seem like a bit less realistic. And I think that whole game mode, I guess, is supposed to be like that. But if those points were more like push pull, or like more like the skirmish mode style, I feel like the engagements we'd have on them would be a little more realistic, rather than just a bunch of dudes
yeah.
circling
So
around a
the
pole
point
to
that
shield them.
the point that Kappa had
I like that idea too.
was to kind of have objectives that kind of, so there's a set amount of objectives, but you only get a random couple of those. So the devs could code in a bunch of objectives for each map, but only a couple of those objectives are actually active in like when you come in. So they could be different every time, which I feel
I
like would
think you're both
definitely,
saying the same thing
yeah.
is like make a cap zone instead of a flag where the flag is or in that area. and it's not something that's like outside of what they're already doing. They already have cap zones. They know how to make those.
Yeah, but it's more like putting those cap zones on places that they would actually sort of maybe fight over during the Civil War. Like, say, like, obviously, you know,
Little
on
Round Top.
Little Round Top, they were, take the top of the hill. So it'd be a bit like on, say, on Maryland Heights, for example, they could have different points that objectives that can swap around. So one point could be capture the artillery position or the artillery camp where the Union like spawns. Obviously, they would need to change that to being at the actual spawn, or take the hill or take the top of the hill where the point's near the top of the hill, or kind of like what there is on Conquest, where it's like, do you know like how you can go all the way to the peak of the mountain where there's like a flag there?
Yeah, the overlook. Yeah.
Yeah, the overlook. It'd be like, exactly, like capture the overlook, just all that sort of stuff. I feel like having named points just makes a little realistic touch to it that can kind
Yeah,
of make it.
name points, or more, if they could, I guess, code it in such a way where achieving the objective is more in sync with what is realistic. Like if they're saying, with their example that they pointed out that they gave us in the chat was artillery battery, but like you literally have to knock out their guns, you have to like destroy their guns, or if they added some mechanism where you actually
I feel like they are gonna add.
sabotage
I feel like
the
they will.
guns.
They will add a an artillery. You can destroy artillery cannons.
It spike the guns, right?
And that would
That's
add
the
so much
Like the guns
realism
would
to
be
it.
cool if it was like in Hell Let Loose, how it takes forever to kill a node as an enemy. I don't know if you're familiar
somewhere
with that, but
it
it
can't
like you
just
have to
happen
actually
quickly.
sit there for a very long time, or not a very long time, but say 5 minutes, like in skirmishing, if you can, or in formation or something like that, to
And
spike
that's a
the
way to
gun.
organically do it. Like this whole thing about making like nodes of contention, like capture the top of the hill. Every skirmish now you have capture the enemy artillery position.
Yeah.
Like huge deal.
Mhm.
That could maybe take like a certain amount of tickets or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like we're getting off
Well,
track
no,
though. I don't.
you don't have to code anything. You just code in spiking, and all of a sudden, artillery becomes a organic point to
Yeah, I
capture.
guess that's a realism thing.
You say it's off track, Ninja, but this is a way that the devs can, just like the title, balance gameplay and realism. It's realistic
Okay, no,
somewhat
that's a fair point.
because
it's a
you
it's a
have
little
positions.
touch. It's a little touch, but it gets them ever closer to getting up that ladder of
Yeah,
the
it adds a bit more realism in a sense, but it also adds a bit more of a switch up in gameplay, which I feel like obviously this game can be stale for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden there's a big switch up in gameplay, and all of a sudden the game's alive again, just like when they brought out Contention and Conquest. Like I feel like, when they brought those out, they're not obviously the most played game modes, but at the same time they can be a fun little thing to play. Contention definitely a lot more fun than Conquest, because I feel like
Agreed.
Conquest is even a lot
For
more
sure.
forced than Skirmishes. Like
The ticket drain on Conquest is just not balanced. I think it's not right, but
It's too harsh.
it's
Yeah,
not
you capture
playable
two, it's
really.
done.
I think what is it? The replayability is just not as good on
That's a good
those.
point as well.
yeah, whereas at least on most skirmish maps, for instance, you can kind of change what you want to do, and it doesn't have a huge effect. Whereas in Conquest, it can lose you the round in the first 5 minutes, which obviously we've seen some rounds where it's gone on for like 7 minutes and that's it.
Yeah,
And
strategic.
just the poor luck, really.
Exactly. Whereas
Yeah.
I feel like
That's
in
to Rollins' point. That's the replayability. The guys already know what to do. They get in there. They cap the point. They have the stone wall or whatever. Like you're done. That's it.
Yeah, in the StarCraft community, back when I was paying attention to news and what they were arguing about there, the arguments were getting to such a level about the race balances and stuff like that, that it wasn't so much people complaining about the win rates between the races or whether they could win. It was not so much that. It was more about quality of life things like uh, this race is only able to win consistently if they played in only one particular way. And they were kind of more convincing the developers or giving feedback about um, increasing the amount of strategic diversity so that there's just multiple kind
You
of
don't have to just zero
play
rush.
styles. Yeah, there's multiple viable-ish play styles that make the game just more tolerable to play over a long period of time because you're able to like try winning with Terran with this way, and then with Bio, and then with Mech, and then with this other crazy way. You know, and it's not like an auto loss or anything like that
Mm-hmm.
to try. You know, and I feel like that when you're dealing with a game that's mature like that, I think those kind of decisions help more with increasing casual play than purely is the side winning enough? You know, like that's almost like too simplistic of a way to think about like game mode or like win rates things.
Right, so we got about 5 minutes left, roughly. So we're gonna quickly brisk over regimental side of War of Rights. And do you think the regimental side of War of Rights adds a big touch of realism to the game itself, or do you think that is simply just a, or not simply, because that kind of puts you into a yes or no sort of situation?
Depends on the regiment.
Yeah. So do you think, but do you think just regiments themselves add that realistic aspect? So say, obviously we all have our ranks, we all have our rank structures, we all have our, like some regiments have their charters and stuff, and all that sort of thing, and their play styles. Do you think regiments themselves add a big chunk of that realism, or do you think it's solely based on the game? Like the game has how it is, and the regiments just kind of jump into it, or do you think the regiments add a nice chunk of that realism?
I mean, of
Well,
course,
the
I think it
regiments are
depends.
here for the game. Sorry, you
Go
go.
ahead, Pia. Okay, I'll go. So I think one that it depends on the regiment and depends on the game mode. I think, regiments are great in some of the historical modes that we play, without uh, Discord and all that kind of communication. Um, However, obviously having Discord makes it very unrealistic, and like having, yeah, it's like that's really ultimately is like, yeah, if you have Discord and you're giving orders through Discord and you can operate with instant communication with everyone on the battlefield, no, it doesn't make it more realistic. It makes it more fun and more competitive. And but like, I don't know, the one thing the regiments add for realism is that people follow the orders and people stick together, whereas versus pub play, like there's really no, you can't reprimand people. When I play pub, I just go off by myself. I mean, I'm a little asshole, but like that's the one thing it does add. But otherwise, no.
I get that. Um, Obviously, I think, yeah. I mean, you kind of did hit pretty much all of the points with that. It's kind of just like the whole basis of following the command structure. Kind of stay. If you're a private, your job is to stay in line. Be be a private. Whereas if you're an NCO, your job is to. I feel like NCOs, in my opinion, have a lot more important jobs than officers, because officers really, there's
I
only
would say
one.
just as important,
I wouldn't. No, I
but
wouldn't
yeah.
say so, because if you're a regiment, you have 20 guys. Okay, within those 20 guys, you may have 5 officers, maybe more, maybe less. There's only really one main officer that is important to listen to, in a sense, and maybe then the EXO. But the NCOs, they're the ones that are the ones relaying the orders, keeping the line in formation, keeping the line straight, nice and neat. So
That's
I feel like
huge.
in War of Rights, in a War of Rights event, NCOs definitely have way more of a realistic job to do than the officers do, considering there can only be one with the pistol and giving the orders. because you don't want to have multiple officers trying to lead at the same time.
Well, they're effectively doing the same thing. The NCO is just repeating what the officer is saying. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't say more important because they're not. I mean, if you weren't there, then they're the officer, and then
exactly. But I mean,
it's
like, even
it's just
then,
as important because everybody needs to hear and be aware of what's going on. I think it's kind of semantics. It's a fair point. Like NCOs are very important, good ones.
But are they
also,
realistic? I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah, they're out there shouting, repeating the orders, like getting people, you know, morale up if it's down, or getting people in line.
yeah. All right, so I think we've hit kind of around the hour mark, roughly. I don't know. Let's have a look. Should we have a quick gander? Let's see. Yeah, we are pretty much exactly around an hour mark. So we'll go through the list. We'll give some final pointers, or if you have a final message, it's not really related to the whole podcast itself, but you just want to give a final message, feel free. So we'll start from the top again. So Mr. Dayman himself, you got any final words?
Yeah, for the devs, I think is there's just some really minor things that they could do that could really incentivize people to play more realistically, using gaming mechanics and like really tiny things that they could, we're talking about changing the names of the points, changing some formation stuff, like really I think small and realistic changes to the game that could make it a lot more fun.
Mm-hmm. I like it. Ninja.
I would just like to shout out again the regiment who make this game uh, worth playing. I can't stand pub matches. Sorry, Rollins. I don't know how you do it. You do a great job. I've seen it, seen you in action. I don't have the patience for pub matches. I uh, I enjoy the realism of the game. I think that in certain events where everybody is playing, for that aspect of it, of the realism, and there's not like tryhards out there doing sweaty stuff, like that can be a lot of fun. I prefer the gamey, let's kill every single one of them down to last stand with 20 minutes left on the clock if we can, and play the next map. Uh,
And
I like
also,
both. I don't think they mix well, so you have to be either doing one or the other.
PAArmy.com.
Also, PAArmy.com. Um, we invented the PA Army app. Molex, you're the man. Also, shout out to our reenactors who do keep it real. Sergeant Dud and Corporal Nathan.
Is Van Bushra a
Huzzah.
reenactor?
No, he's a veteran, but he's not a reenactor.
Oh.
He wishes.
Rollins?
Yeah, I just wanted to shout out to the pub community for just playing all the time, 24/7, and just being there for all those folks who just aren't able to get in and or find a group that fits their schedule, or just is able to, like, I don't know, play at the same times you do. And then did want to shout out to regiments that are there for those who want to learn more about how combat in this game works, or tactics, or the history, or the gaminess of this game. A lot of that information isn't really discoverable in the game without a lot of first-hand experience, or just
Mm-hmm.
talking with people that you meet. And regiments and the communities and the clans here are collections of those people. So it's definitely a good way to get into discussions like this, where you all share experiences and tips on how to deal with particular things on different maps and stuff like that. And the great oral tradition that is the War of Rights community, and how to play the game. That's all in the mostly in the regimental community. But the pubs are always there, and there are people in the regimental community in the pubs that you could speak to casually anyways. But that, just getting back to that last question about do they add to the realism? I think they do, because if you want to, you know, rehearse orders, you know, dress rehearse what you're going to do when a particular thing is said, that requires practice. And you can practice, you know, in different ways, but that way is probably one of the more realistic ways. Even though if the events they actually run may not feel the most realistic because of the discords and Steam chats and stuff like that. But outside that, pubs are pretty good for the realism aspect, I think, and you definitely get that sense of chaos and the challenges of communication, the mistakes made of improperly worded orders or delayed orders or misinterpreted orders. There'll be all sorts of that uh, in that sphere of the game as well. So there's plenty for everyone.
All right, and from my first aspect, first of all, obviously thank you three for coming on and talking. You know, it's live on YouTube. It'll be as soon as I end this stream, it'll be on his channel forever unless he deletes it. So you know, you're getting yourselves out there. So thank you. And obviously, you know, thank you for the people that were commenting in chat and stuff. Dayman, you did get called a goat by Crimson.
Oh, where's the chat? And on Facebook or on YouTube?
Yeah, and
I love my Crimmy boy.
And Kappa said that, you know, when Rollins is on there, it's a good day, and we have a guy from HD shouting out his reg, and you know, we've had a couple of people in there typing away and discussing it, so good for you. And if any of you guys do want to get in on the podcasts, please join the Battleline Network Discord, which will most likely be in the link of this stream. And make sure you get yourself the podcast rules so you get pinged when I ping for the podcasts and the sign-ups and stuff. But yeah, other than that, yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you for listening. I hope it was informative. I hope you had fun. And I will see you all on the next podcast. Ye huzzah, God save the king.
We don't have kings around here, pal.
Dayman, say it.
Say what?
Say it. Say the ending, pal.
No, I'm not.
PAArmy.com.
I'm not going to get political on the podcast.
Say it.